Gabe Landeskog and Sweden lost today in Olympic pool play, losing to Finland, which of course features his teammate Arturi Lehkonen and his ex-teammate Mikko Rantanen, who did score a goal today as Finland beat Sweden. Canada currently in action. Get you updated on that. The U.S. women playing right now against host Italy. They're up 5-0 last time I saw. And the U.S. men's team will play Denmark tomorrow. I want to stick with the NBA here because Adam Silver, there have to be questions asked about his place in the pantheon of commissioners because it continues to not go well. And the fact of the matter is, Adam Silver lost control of his league. That is what's going on right now, is that Adam Silver is not in control of his league. He doesn't have control over the players, and he doesn't have control over the owners. And this is, obviously the departments, the league office, right, that hands down fines and all of this kind of stuff. But it's Adam Silver, right? So the reason I bring this up, Adam Silver did come down on the Utah Jazz. Talked about this yesterday. Utah, the type of tanking they're doing cannot be tolerated. Right? So Adam Silver fines them today. And you say, well, isn't that good enough? He fined them. He fined them over the game they ended up winning, which is a weird thing to do. They got fined for the Miami game, not the Orlando game or all the other games that they did this advanced form of tanking where they start their best players and then when the game is on the line, they decide, okay, our best players don't need to be in the game anymore. And I guess a fine is a fine. Like it's all you're going to do, is get more people to push back. If Adam Silver would have fined Utah earlier, like when they intentionally tanked a game that they ended up losing, it would look a little bit better than fining Utah $500,000 for a game they won. But therein lies the way Adam Silver goes about his business. Problems are created on his watch, or he helps create these problems. And then he is so far off the mark when it comes to fixing those issues. It's either a wild pendulum swing back the other way, or it's a day late and a dollar short, or you rarely give Adam Silver credit. Like, good job, Adam Silver. He made a good decision today. And I'll give you a few examples. So the super team era happened before the player empowerment era. They one kind of begat the other. Right? But in order to fix this, the NBA swings the complete opposite direction, saying we can't have super teams anymore. So what are we going to do? We are going to make it so restrictive for teams to have more than a couple of stars that it actually will create a situation where even teams, and I'll use the Denver Nuggets as an example, do things the quote unquote right way, build things the right way, and now the rules are so punitive that they had to remake their team. They weren't even rewarded for going about it the right way. The Nuggets were not and have never been a super team. But they go the complete opposite direction to the point that we can't even have a discussion about free agency or trades without, putting on one of those, accountant green shades and trying to figure out the cap, because there are so many rules in place that makes it so difficult for teams to add. We've seen more teams subtract from their teams over the past couple of years than add to them. And I think everybody, have to be fair, everybody wanted the super teams done. It's not fair. The small markets are suffering, all this kind of stuff. Everybody wanted it. But the remedy from Adam Silver went too far. And now we have this revolving door of champions that don't give us any real feeling. It just adds to the feeling that we are not watching the best that the NBA has ever been, because none of these teams can sustain their success for more than a year at a time. Right? It's LA, it's Boston, it's Denver, it's OKC, it's Milwaukee. Obviously, these are in no particular order. And we just bounce from one to the next. And none of these teams are looked at as being all-time great teams. And there's no continuity. And I think there's less interest in the NBA when it's a new team. And we all are in favor of parity. But again, it's a balance. We don't want radical parity where literally the team that won the title the year before has little chance to win the next year. No, we want the team that just won to be able to give it a go and not have to shed salary and get rid of all their players. He just went too far. And then at a time when the players were trying to get, that player empowerment era, like there's some good in there. But Adam Silver, again, went too far. Gave them too much power. Sure, the players deserve a little bit more than they used to, but they don't deserve all of it. And now you have the tanking stuff. And so Adam Silver finds a team for winning a basketball game. And apparently, reportedly, he finds them at the behest of a rival. Reports today that a team that was lobbying hard for Adam Silver to come down on Utah was Oklahoma City. Why would this be? Does Oklahoma City want to look out for the best interest of the game? Do they care about the league in general? Absolutely not. They would take the Jazz pick this year if it falls out of the top 8. OKC wants Adam Silver to keep Utah from doing what they're doing so Oklahoma City can get their pick. And OKC is only in the position that they are currently in because they tanked. So now that they're at the top of the mountain, they're looking down and saying, how dare this team do this? It's like you did it. But this is who Adam Silver is listening to. He's allowing himself to be lobbied by a team that has a vested interest in the Utah Jazz having as good of a season as they could possibly have. Like, get all of this stuff. The All-Star game that we've been talking about all week, and in tanking and parity in the CBA and player empowerment and all of this stuff, it all adds up to one thing. It doesn't seem like Adam Silver has control of his league, and he has to come up with all these cockamamie ideas to try and fix what is a problem that he in some part created. And he's just in this perpetual state of trying to fix his own problems and creating new ones. Because now for today, I don't care as much about what Utah is doing to tank. I care that OKC has the ear of the commissioner, as if OKC doesn't seem to already get preferential enough treatment from certain entities within the NBA, officials. They're now getting it from the commissioner. And for what? Not the greater good of the game. So they can get Utah's pick. I don't know if... I think what Adam Silver has become is the one thing you don't want to be. The guy after the guy. I know that David Stern wasn't universally liked, but David Stern turned a fledgling league into a juggernaut. Interest, money, attendance, everything jumped way up under David Stern's leadership. And the idea was that Adam Silver was going to come in and then just take it that next step. But I don't think anybody wanted Adam Silver to come in and radically change what was going on with the NBA. Couple tweaks here and there. I'll give you one that I actually like. The Supermax. I like that. Give the team that drafts a player an advantage over the market to retain that player. And it could have been done just then. If some guy wants to forego an additional year and the 20, 30, 50 more million dollars that would entail, then look, you can't fight a man's will. But part of what happened when the Heatles all got together, and later Kevin Durant joining, Golden State, is that financially it wasn't a huge difference for LeBron and KD and Bosh. And Adam Silver put in the Supermax and then created that. And he should have just left it. But now he's going probably at the behest of cheap owners, creating this second apron that is making teams that even are building things up the right way, making them hamstrung. But it was supposed to be take the product that David Stern helped build, maybe make a tweak here or there, but just don't wreck it. And it feels like Adam Silver's wrecking the NBA. Or at least the NBA, to be fair, it's not all him, but it's happening on his watch. We're coming out of the NFL, which is as close to a perfect league as we could possibly get. And it's not perfect, but it's as close to perfect as we have in sports. right? The season length, little bit too long, but not drastically too long, not MLB too long. One more game than probably should be. They're playoffs, maybe a team or two more than it should be. Yeah, the officiating, we don't love the officiating, but it's as close to a perfect league as we have. And then we come away from this, right? Because we're going to take a breath here before we get into the draft and everything like that. And we look at the landscape of sports and the NBA being the most prominent thing that is going on right now. And we look at it and we go, ugh, what is going on with your league? Nobody plays. It's not as entertaining of a product. And we're scrutinizing everything that the NBA is doing. This should be a moment for the NBA to be celebrated, to be able to say, look at how good we are. Yeah, you've been locked into the football world, but now take a look. Our crown, one of our crown jewel competitions, the All-Star games coming up. This should be a chance for the NBA to show off a little bit. And instead, it looks like Adam Silver is continuing to lose control of his league and doesn't know how to recalibrate, how to get put any of these genies back in the bottle. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313, back after this. The question I posed today, because Chris Paul is retiring, and I think you could argue the most decorated athlete to never win a championship. So who's the best? Is it Chris Paul? I think it's Barry Bonds. But I threw out some other ones that would be on the list. I think Connor McDavid. I mean, you just watch him and you know you're watching one of the all-time greats. You know it. I'm one to say let's not put somebody on lists of greatest and all that kind of stuff before they're done. But this is not, Connor McDavid being one of the greatest, best, like most talented. These athletes that you remember watching them and go, how in the world did they not win? I think we're in that mode with Connor McDavid. How does this guy not have a title? Because you watch him, and you watched him today and that's a great way to look at it too. Watch him with Team Canada. He looks the same way he does with the Oilers. And that's all the best players in Canada that he's playing with. He still looks like there's a large gap between him and the guys he's on the ice with. Now, he doesn't play with Nathan McKinnon all the time. But I think Connor McDavid's got to be on that list. But I'm going to go with Barry Bonds. This from Chris. Charles Barkley or Frank Gore? Frank Gore is Chris Paul the NBA version of Frank Gore? Or and here's what I mean by that. Accumulated a lot of stats. Certainly. Longevity. Absolutely. But would you consider Frank Gore one of the best running backs of all time? I wouldn't. Would I consider Chris Paul one of the greatest basketball players ever? No. Is he one of the greatest point guards ever? Yeah, so maybe a little bit different than Frank Gore. I think with the amount of yards that Frank Gore accumulated, he'd be somewhere on the list. Not top 5. Certainly not at the top. Charles Barkley, I said, he's not more accomplished than a Karl Malone, but could you argue that he was a better player than Karl Malone? Best prime on prime, right? Prime Charles Barkley against prime Karl Malone. I think you could argue. And Charles Barkley certainly on the, top 10 best athletes to never win a title. I like this one from Laura in the Olympic spirit. Michelle Kwan, silver medalist in one Olympics, a bronze in another. So never won the big one. Let's see. This from the 719, top 5 to never win a major championship. T.O., Dan Marino, Karl Malone, Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr. T.O. being top 5, I can't get on board with that. The Griffey one, too high. But that's a really good one, too. And Griffey, as we say, why didn't these players win? Well, you know why Griffey didn't. A big reason, because the minute he went to Cincinnati, his career went down the tubes. He was perpetually injured and was never the same again. But Seattle, Ken Griffey Jr., probably one of the greatest baseball players ever. So I like the inclusion of Griffey. That's a really good one. Number one, I wouldn't have. I'll still stick with Bonds. T.O. seems high. You wouldn't have. I guess you have Marino on the list. If we took off, see, I think Barkley would be above T.O. If we remove Josh Allen and Connor McDavid, who are seemingly destined to be on this list, but they're not done, right? So if we remove any current athletes, I don't know that T.O. would be in my top five. I think I might have to move Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley definitely into the top five. Continue to take your thoughts on that. Welcome in hour 2 on this Friday. Great to have you. Shouts to those of you watching the show on our social media platforms, whether you follow 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300 on the likes of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can watch there while you're there, like, subscribe, and comment. You can comment like Aaron has when it comes to the discussion that I started in the first hour. Chris Paul is calling it a career. Certainly one of the most decorated athletes to never win a championship, but is he one of the best? Or where would he be on the list of best? Would you put Chris Paul above John Stockton? I think I would. Given the successes that Chris Paul had with a number of different teams, and John Stockton never won a title either. But I'd have him down the list a little bit. The best athletes to never win a championship. I like this one from Aaron. It's kind of similar as we had texter just a few minutes ago, throw Ken Griffey Jr. into the mix. And I guess, and I'm displaying it on the live stream right now, it says Bo Jackson is the best athlete to never win a championship, unless you're talking about high school state championships, which I'm not, as also John Stockton and Karl Malone. They're on the list. Karl Malone would be in the top 5. If I took out current athletes, because we don't care as much about current athletes who have not won a title as we do past athletes, Karl Malone would probably be second on my list. Throws in some other ones, Champ Bailey, Carmelo Anthony, Nolan Arenado. None of those would be anywhere close on a list. English, Iverson, neither. Patrick Ewing, Ted Williams, I like those better. And I like this poll, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Laura had the Michelle Kwan and Aaron has Zlatan. I dig that. All encompassing. But yeah, some of those Moss, Calvin Johnson, I guess. Yeah, Randy Moss was. I mean, Calvin Johnson, both of them were certainly two of the most talented wide receivers I've ever seen. But how high would they be on that list? Some good ones. AI might be. Carmelo Anthony's nowhere close, nor is Champ Bailey anywhere high on that list. Ted Williams is a good one. I threw out Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn, one of the best pure hitters in the history of baseball. I don't think he even really, maybe other than once, got that close to winning a title. Yeah, I'll take more of your thoughts. I think Bonds is number 1, but a lot of really good suggestions. Best athlete to never win a title. Brett says, if only Ken Griffey Jr. would have done steroids, he would have made people forget about Barry Bonds, who did steroids. I don't know. We'd be thinking about both of them. We would just be lumping in Ken Griffey Jr. with Bonds like we do McGuire and Sosa. But you do bring up a good point. Ken Griffey Jr. did not use steroids. Barry Bonds did. Is that why Barry Bonds had, the longevity he had, and Ken Griffey Jr. didn't? I think there's an argument there. But I'll continue to take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Best athlete to have never won a championship. Bonds, Malone, Marino. Griffey's moving way up the list. That was a really good one. But, Ken Griffey Jr., again, just didn't really have the longevity. And he wasn't, I don't think Ken Griffey Jr. was ever one of those players that we ever talked about being long-suffering. I think that's, Barry Bonds, there was a lot of conversation. Dan Marino, John Elway, of course, till the very end of, man, when is this guy going to win? Connor McDavid's treading in that territory. Josh Allen is treading that territory. I think with Ken Griffey Jr., the emotion was more, he needs to get healthy. It wasn't about him winning a title, that people just want to see him back out on the field. Bo Jackson, Aaron brought up Bo Jackson. That was another thing. He was a great athlete, but we saw him for 5 minutes. I think a list that you put together, I think most of the names on that list will be athletes that you, watching them late in their careers, man, how has this guy not won a championship? But Chris Paul, somewhere on the list. If it was just basketball players, where would he be? Top 10, certainly. Would he be top 5? Malone, Barkley. He might be top 5. Depending on how you feel about him versus John Stockton. But it really is interesting that a player that made a career out of making his teams better, assisting, never really got too many shots to win. Like Stockton got multiple opportunities. Chris Paul didn't. So continue to take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Saw this today, and, congressmen getting involved in things, always a recipe for something. But I saw this from Ross Dellinger. So Senator Eric Schmidt, I don't care about his affiliation or what state he represents, but he put out a quote-unquote blueprint to save college sports. And I think it ties into what I went to in hour number 1 regarding Adam Silver. And how his league is rife with problems right now. And he's just not addressing any of them in a meaningful way. Maybe the All-Star game. Maybe he will have addressed that by going Team World versus Team USA. We'll find out on Sunday. But tanking, it doesn't seem like he's made progress. In fact, it seems like it's getting worse. The alternative to super teams is that no one can hang on to their players, which I don't know that anybody prefers. And then you have this from this congressman who's putting up, let's see, he has 4 pillars right away. 4 pillars, too many pillars. Pillar 1, end rulemaking by lawsuit. Allow athlete protective rules without the threat of immediate freezing litigation. Create a national standard. Allow conferences to choose their own governing bodies. Create a national one-time transfer rule. Strengthen and reaffirm eligibility standards. Align coaching transitions with transfer windows. Like, he's got like 15 of these. And here's the problem. You have to, I would say you got to find one thing with college athletics. You got to find one aspect to fit. You're not going to fix, he has pay for play on here. You're not going to fix that and the transfer portal and, protecting. He wants to protect Olympic sports, which I am all in favor of. But if you're going to make meaningful change, and I know this because I'm a little ADHD and I write a to-do list every single day, and I realize that I have so many things on a daily basis that it actually overwhelms me and I can't get anything done. Like I want to do all this stuff. I can't. But can I focus on one or two things to make a real difference in? I think that's, to say nothing of the effectiveness of Congress to do much of anything in our world, but just the idea needs to be, what is the biggest problem? And if we can fix the biggest problem, maybe we could start to fix some things around that problem and build out. And I think it's the portal. It's the portal. That's what it has to be. First of all, you got to have it one transfer portal, one portal window. And there are little things that you can do along with that. Yes, you can align it with the calendar so that players, when their coach leaves, that they have an opportunity to go. But you also don't want the transfer portal to open before your season is over. So the timing of the transfer portal is the most important thing with the portal. And then you can get into, well, should you be able to enter the portal multiple times? Can you curtail tampering in the portal? And kind of just build your way out from there. But I think the portal is what you look at first with college athletics. You say, can we make meaningful change there? And I think already meaningful change is fitting it into a calendar that makes sense instead of creating more chaos. Like the Adam Silver way of doing things, you're making things worse instead of making them better. Just move the transfer portal to after the season is over. And I know they say academics and all that kind of stuff. Forgive me. And I value education, but forgive me for thinking that colleges have never bent the rules for athletes. Like that's never happened before. They've never made accommodations to make sure that a premier athlete is enrolled at their school. That's never happened before. So all of a sudden, the academic calendar being so rigid that they just can't do this, I don't believe it. I don't. Now, is there a way to find a spot for it? And maybe you get it down a path of fixing the scheduling and why teams wait so long to compete in the college football playoff. Like, let's move it along. Let's get going. Maybe that's the way. But you start with the question of, where can we move the portal so it mitigates some of the chaos that we see? And I think the portal is at the heart of every bit of chaos in college sports. Right? Because teams are trying to lure players through the portal with pay for play. So there's the NIL part of it. The time that coaches leave and the time that players can leave doesn't sync up correctly. I think if your coach takes another job, you should be able to go into the transfer portal and follow him. I'm fine with that. But right now, you can't do it. You either got to jump through the portal, and then if your coach somehow lands in a spot that you'd rather be, then you can go there. But to say you're going to protect Olympic sports, and you're going to tamp down spending on NIL, and you're going to cut down on NIL being pay for play, and you're going to fix the calendar to where the transfer portal makes any sense, and you're going to keep coaches from, like, there's too many things. And you'll find if you focus on one thing and you start building out from that, maybe you can accomplish a little bit more. I think it starts with the portal. Put the portal in a place that makes sense. And then you ask yourself, how many times are we going to allow players to go into the portal? I am one that says if they want to keep going into the portal, let them keep going into the portal. Just put that timing at the end of a season. They want to keep jumping through the portal. I think that teams should be smart enough to recognize that that's not a player that you want on your roster, that keeps looking for the bigger, better deal, that keeps going in and out of the transfer portal. You don't want a player like that. Some still will if they're talented enough. I say let the market decide when it comes to how many times you jump in the portal. And then if you do that, if you set a better date for when the transfer portal opens and the transfer portal period goes on, then maybe you can police tampering a little bit better. But it's just too many. You throw out, like, yes, he correctly identified everything wrong with college athletics. And there's a lot, but you're going to fix all of that? Of course you're not. Pick one thing. Find what's at the heart of all of this. And say, this is what I'm going to do. I am the transfer portal candidate. My main goal is making sure that the transfer portal makes sense in the NCAA calendar. And then my next order of business after I do that, that way we can better regulate tampering and build from there. But start with one concrete idea. Don't just name all of the problems. And politicians do this all the time. Right? Both sides of the aisle. They come up with 10 things that they're going to do, and they do one, maybe in their first term. But this makes a lot of sense that this is coming from Congress rather than someone within the college sports world, because I bet you if you got someone from the college sports world, they'd say, this is the thing. This is the thing before everything else that we got to take care of. And if we take care of this, then we have a chance to start taking care of these other things. But it has to start here. And this congressman is like, I got 20 things I'm going to fix with college athletics, which probably means, like Ryan in his to-do list, you're going to get none of them done. 719-24-7. 1313 to update you on what's going on in the Olympics. Good news, bad news. If you're a fan of Team USA, and mostly good news if you're an Avs fan. That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Update from Italy. First, the good news. USA women's hockey rolled again over Italy. That was another blowout performance by the U.S. as they beat the host Italy 6-0. So if you're keeping track at home, they have outscored their opponents, including rival Canada, 26-1. So they're a wagon. Canada men's hockey is a wagon. They got a win today. Nathan McKinnon got a goal in the win for Canada, scored the last goal of the game. It was McDavid, Harley, Celebrini scoring again. How about Macklin Celebrini? He was, 7 when the Olympics, when NHLers were last in the Olympics? And he's got 2 goals through 2 games. Sid had 1, and Nathan McKinnon had the last one as they beat Switzerland 5-1. So 5 seems to be the magic number. Canada won yesterday 5-0, wins today 5-1. The U.S. beats Latvia 5-1, and they play Denmark tomorrow. The bad news is that the quad god, Ilya Malinin, who was the star of these games when it comes to figure skating, fell twice in the men's free skate and failed to medal. And I was reading stuff today that literally as long as he didn't fall twice, he would win. Falling once, he may have still won gold. The way that I was reading it, I'm not an expert on figure skating, but the idea was this was absolutely his gold medal to lose, and he lost it. Just crushing. And now people are going to bring up his comments from earlier in the week where he basically said he was pacing himself for this particular event. Didn't bring out the quad axle that he is the only human being on planet Earth to be able to do it. Wasn't going to pull it out in the team competitions or some of these other things he was supposed to bring out today. And I think his comments were a little misconstrued. He's a young guy. I don't know that he spoke as eloquently as he hoped to. His agent kind of came out and, put out some of the flames. It wasn't that he was holding back. But in figure skating, obviously, you have the ability to use some moves, not use some other moves. And by the way, he helped Team USA win gold. So even at whatever percentage he was at pacing himself at, he was still amazing and helped Team USA win gold. But the fact that it seemed like the week was building towards this event, and for him to come up short, just brutal. And I'm not criticizing. This isn't criticism. I legitimately feel for the guy. But fell twice and failed to medal. And the U.S. is hurting for some medals right now. 4 back of Norway in both the gold medal count and total medal count. But things looking quite good for the women's curling team, the women's hockey team, the men's hockey team. We'll see. They'll definitely medal. We'll see if they add to the gold medal count. Overall, I don't know that this has been a weekend the best Olympics for Team USA. The week started with Lindsey Vonn crashing, breaking her leg. Michaela Schifrin runs her losing streak, if you want to call it that, to 7 races in the Olympics without medaling. She's going to be in competition tomorrow. Now you have the next big thing, the quad god that is falling twice in his men's free skate event. I don't know that over, and there have been plenty of really good stories, right? And I've been talking about them. I mean, Breezy Johnson early in the first day, really, of competition, winning gold. She did her part in her race with Michaela Schifrin. I want to call her Liz Lemonly. 20-year-old winning gold in her first Olympics in snowboarding. Jalen Koff, also from Vail, finishing second in that event. But even, too, you have Chloe Kim denied the three-peat. So I don't know if the first week of the games out in Italy have gone the way that Team USA would have hoped. But there are some signs that maybe week 2 will be better for Team USA. Again, USA Hockey in action tomorrow against Denmark, if you want to check that out. Continuing with our conversation, best athletes to never win a title, as Chris Paul calls it, a career. I don't know that he's high on this list, but there's some others. Barry Bonds at the top of my list. Some making the assertion that it should be Ken Griffey Jr. above him, including Brett, who says Barry Bonds and Ken Griffey Jr. both played 22 years in the major leagues. One of them had 630 home runs with clean urine. The other one jacked his stats using steroids. Yeah, but within those 22 years, to get back to my point about Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds ended up playing over 300 more games. I mean, so he basically actually played 24 years within 22 seasons, or maybe Ken Griffey Jr. actually played only 20 years. If that. I mean, some of these, I mean, he had a year 83, 53, 70, 72. And I get it. And the Barry Bonds steroid stuff is a part of the story. So if you want to look at Ken Griffey Jr. as the superior player because he was clean, then that's fine. I just think you got to take it all into account. It's all encompassing. And if you want to say that Barry Bonds is the best athlete to never win a title, and you want to say part of the reason why he was the best athlete is because he was juicing, that's fine. I'm not here protecting Barry Bonds. I'm not sticking up for the guy. But in terms of his accolades, in terms of how feared he was as a hitter, and a lot of what struck fear into opposing pitchers was not because he was juicing. But certainly Griffey and Bonds up near the top of that list. For sure, greatest athletes. Got another text in that most people would take Stockton over Chris Paul all day long. I think there needs to be a little bit of appreciation for what Chris Paul did on the teams that he was on. Just as fair as it is to, when you're arguing Malone versus Barkley, to throw out the fact that Malone played with Stockton. Stockton did play with Malone. I don't know if Blake Griffin was ever going to be in the same breath as Karl Malone or Devin Booker. You know what's funny, though? I think about this with Chris Paul retiring today. If David Stern hadn't nixed that trade, would we be having this conversation today? If he goes to the other LA, if Chris Paul becomes a Laker, I think it changes a lot. I think, one, because I don't think he probably ends up on the list of athletes to never win a title. First of all, and second of all, because of the aura of the LA Lakers, I think Chris Paul would be remembered as a greater player than maybe he was. And he's a great player. Like, don't get me wrong, no one's arguing that he's not great. But you think about the different path that Chris Paul's career takes. He probably, from a statistical standpoint, similar, right? Because that has to do with his talent, and he was productive in Phoenix and LA and New Orleans. But if he goes to the Lakers, I don't know that the text would be coming in to say that people would take Stockton over him all day long. Maybe because he wins a title, but also the uniform that he wore. And we do this. We do this in every sport. You play for the 49ers or the Cowboys or the Steelers. You play for the Lakers or the Celtics, and you get a bit of a boost. I don't know. I would love for someone to find, and I think maybe somebody has, but with all the 49ers and Cowboys that get in, and you've seen some players that are down on the list in terms of impact to the dynasties that those two franchises had getting in. I wonder if somebody has come up with what that amplifier is. If you play for the Lakers as opposed to the Clippers, how much greater are you considered? If you're the same player with the Lakers as you are the Clippers, how much greater are you viewed? I would love for somebody to do that. But we've seen in the NFL that, I mean, just the anecdotal evidence of the number of players from those franchises getting in, and it gets to the point where you go, really? Do we have to put in every Dallas Cowboy? Or are we overrating the careers of some of these players because they had a star on the side of their helmet? Yankees, same way. In baseball, if you're a Yankee, that means a lot more than if you're a Brewer. Now, how much different would Chris Paul's career and the way we view him be different had David Stern not nixed the trade that was going to send him to the Lakers? I think quite a bit. And he's already called the point guard. So we do revere Chris Paul to some extent. Maybe you don't consider him the best point guard of all time. He's one of them. But if he was in Laker purple and gold, be a different story. 719-24-7-1313. Back after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Couple more entries into the question of the day. Best athletes to never win a championship, as Chris Paul has retired. Eric says Marino, and I think that if you were to do something that we love to do on this show, which is create a Mount Rushmore. We have created Mount Rushmores for so many different things in sports. If you were to create a Mount Rushmore of athletes to have never won a title, would this be the Mount Rushmore? Would it be Bonds, Marino, Malone, and Griffey? Do we have that as the Mount Rushmore? Certainly a lot of other ones that you could consider. I think that that's the Mount Rushmore. And I think that I would say the fourth spot is the one that is a bit fungible. I think when we think of the best athletes to have never won a title, I think Bonds is always brought up. I think Malone is always brought up. And I think Marino is always brought up. Who would that next guy be? I like putting Griffey on there. I do. But, Ken Griffey Jr. wasn't exactly knocking on the door every single year. And injuries were one of the factors on why he didn't. And I think when we think of these athletes, the best and have never won a title, I think we most often associate that with athletes who have been on the field, on the ice, on the court, year in and year out, knocking on the door, trying to break through and just never can. That's why I think if Bonds, Malone, Marino, that's the holy trinity of athletes to have never won a title. No one can. If we're talking about retired athletes, I think Josh Allen is heading down that road. Connor McDavid is heading down that road. But athletes that's all said and done and they did not win a title, I think that's the three. And then the fourth spot is the one that may be up for a little bit of a debate. Aaron's sending in a lot of good ones. He says Ted Williams should be. Ted Williams above Ken Griffey Jr.? We could do that. Is Ted Williams not number one? I don't think so. Rank Bonds pre-steroids. You can't. I mean, you can't. You just can't. And that's why I say put Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame and spray paint it NWO style on the plaque or whatever you want to do and say he did steroids. The only thing I could say about Barry Bonds, before he got to the Giants and before the alleged steroid use, was that he was one of the most talented players in baseball. One of the best players in baseball. That is a fact. Was he a Hall of Famer? I can't say that. It's like the thing that Dan Patrick always brings up with Matthew Stafford and Russell Wilson. Like, well, Russell Wilson, it's because he won early and didn't win late. And I think there's some truth to that, but also cut Russell Wilson's career after, instead of being traded to the Broncos, Russell Wilson retires. You put in that guy in the Hall of Fame? I'm not. So I really hate the Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before he took steroids. No, maybe he was on track to be a Hall of Famer before he took steroids. But what if he just suddenly retired rather than going to the Giants? He wouldn't have been on the Hall of Fame. He took a career that looked to be on the path to Cooperstown and made it into one of the best careers, albeit to never win a title, we have seen from a baseball player. And he says Tony Gwynn 100%. Tony Gwynn is great. But, man, those Padre teams were straight up garbage. A lot of them. Not all of them, obviously. But, yeah, I think it's Bonds, Malone, Marino, and then who's that next guy? Ted Williams, Ken Griffey Jr., or do you want to put a current player on there? Yeah, I think it's clear that Connor McDavid is one of the best hockey players to ever grace planet Earth. I think we already know that. Is it too early to put him on that list? Talent-wise, Connor McDavid absolutely is one of the most talented athletes to have yet to win. But I get it. You got to put guardrails in somewhere. Right? You got to draw the line somewhere. Maybe, we did this with the greatest quarterbacks ever. Like, even I'm not comfortable with saying that Patrick Mahomes right now is on the Mount Rushmore of greatest quarterbacks ever. I'm just saying by the time he's done, he's going to be. But he's not on there now. So it's okay to wait. It's fine. This from the 719, Barry Sanders. Yeah. Be up there. But like and this was another thing we brought up again with the knocking on the door, like Barry Sanders wasn't even close. So I think there's like an emotional, like you saw them get close and they didn't get there. They didn't ultimately win it. And that kind of got seared in your brain. It just Barry Sanders never even came close to winning a title. But again, if it were just doing the talent thing, Barry Sanders has to be in that. Jim Kelly made the playoffs 8 of 11 years. He played 6 division championships and 4 consecutive Super Bowls. Talk about the agony of defeat for such a great person/athlete. Jim Kelly's good. But I think Dan Marino is a better quarterback. The Bills are great. And Aaron brought this up earlier. Bills fans. I mean, could you say that those Bills teams are the greatest teams to never win a championship? I think absolutely. Jim Kelly would be top 10. He's not on the Mount Rushmore. I'm not putting him on the Mount Rushmore, and I'm not putting him above Marino. But a top 10 list, I think you can make the argument that Jim Kelly should be on there. One thing, interestingly enough, with Chris Paul, and maybe this is why we're not really having a conversation about him, or you're not bringing him up. I don't think Chris Paul was ever on a team that was the best to never win a title. Were those Lob City teams that good? I mean, they were good. Were they that good? Were they all-time great good? Like the Utah Jazz teams of Stockton and Malone. I think the Utah Jazz teams of Stockton and Malone would crush those LA Clippers teams. That's an all-time great team that never won a title. The Buffalo Bills, same way. All-time great team, just couldn't get it done when it mattered the most. So, Another one for Champ Bailey. I don't. Not top 10. No. I don't think so. Of all sports, of an NFLer, I think it's dicey. To throw in every other sport and Champ Bailey being on that, I can't get there. It was suggested earlier, I can't. Top 10, maybe. But what did we just say? We said, and I got 30 seconds here. We got Sanders, Kelly, Marino, Moss, Calvin Johnson. I mean, there's 5. Could Champ Bailey get on that list? Maybe, but not every sport. No way. That's going to do it for me. I will talk to you on Altitude at 7 for Air Force Hockey. Have a great weekend.